Welcome aboard the interstellar starship Genesis. Together, we'll journey beyond the boundaries of known space, explore distant worlds, and witness the quiet wonders of the universe. If you enjoy relaxing sci-fi sleep stories like this, please consider liking this video and subscribing to join us on future voyages. Now find a comfortable place to rest. Take a slow, gentle breath, and whenever you're ready, let the journey begin. Chapter 1. Where is everyone? There is something strange about the universe. The longer you travel through it, the stranger it becomes. Before Genesis left Earth, it seemed only natural to believe that somewhere among the countless stars, another civilization must surely exist. After all, the universe is almost unimaginably vast. Surely a place so immense could not belong to only one intelligent species. And yet, the further humanity has traveled from home, the quieter the universe has become. Tonight, as we continue our voyage between the stars, we will explore one of the greatest scientific mysteries ever asked. If the galaxy is filled with worlds, why haven't we found anyone, perhaps by the end of our journey together? You'll discover that the answer is not what most people expect. Life aboard Genesis begins as it always does. The lights gradually brighten throughout the residential ring. The familiar sounds of ventilation and circulating water quietly announce the beginning of another day. The gardens are already awake beneath their growing lights. Breakfast is prepared. Maintenance teams begin inspecting systems that have now operated continuously for months without interruption. Everything aboard the ship moves with quiet purpose. After your morning routine, you make your way toward the observation lounge. It has become one of your favorite places aboard Genesis, not because something extraordinary happens there, but because almost nothing does. Along the corridor leading to the lounge, several new display panels have appeared over the past few weeks. Each one holds an expanding map of the stars surrounding Genesis. The astronomy team updates these charts every evening using observations collected from the ship's telescopes. Anyone aboard is welcome to help. Some compare photographs taken weeks apart. Others measure the tiny movements of nearby stars against the distant background. It is careful work, patient work. Most evenings the changes are almost too small to notice. Yet together, those tiny measurements are creating one of humanity's first star catalogs from beyond the solar system. You pause for a moment beside one of the completed charts. Hundreds of tiny points cover the page. Each one represents another sun. For generations, humanity could only wonder whether those distant stars possessed planets of their own. Today, we know the answer. They do. Modern astronomy has revealed that planets are remarkably common throughout our galaxy. Some stars have one, others have many. Rocky worlds, gas giants, frozen worlds, planets larger than Jupiter, and others not much bigger than the Earth humanity left behind. With every passing year, the list continues to grow. Looking at the chart, it becomes almost impossible not to imagine countless worlds waiting beyond those tiny points of light. Worlds with oceans, worlds with mountains, worlds where life may have had billions of years to begin. And then, another thought quietly follows. If planets are so common, if the building blocks of life appear throughout the galaxy, why do these charts contain only stars? Why are there no confirmed civilizations? No distant engineering projects? no unmistakable signals, no evidence that anyone has ever looked back. The question stays with you as you continue into the observation lounge. Beyond the great windows, Genesis sails steadily onward. The stars shine with the same quiet patience they always have. Beautiful, ancient, silent. It is a silence that has inspired one of the greatest scientific questions ever asked. Not, are we alone? But rather, if we are not alone, where is everyone? Over the course of this voyage, we will follow the discoveries that have brought scientists to this remarkable question. We will explore what we know about the countless worlds scattered throughout our galaxy, why many researchers believe life beyond Earth may be possible, and why the universe has remained so wonderfully mysterious despite everything humanity has learned. For now, you take one last look through the observation window. The darkness has not changed, neither have the stars, but somehow the universe feels a little more mysterious than it did yesterday and tomorrow. As Genesis continues deeper into the galaxy, we will begin with a discovery that changed the way humanity looks at the night sky forever. Chapter 2. A galaxy full of worlds. This evening, you find yourself returning to the observation lounge once again. The room has become a familiar part of life aboard Genesis, not because the view changes very often, but because every so often, your understanding of it does. As you enter, the lights have already been dimmed. Beyond the great observation windows, the stars shine with the same quiet brilliance they always have. Inside, a small group has gathered around one of the ship's astronomical displays. Genesis spends every day studying the stars ahead of her journey, not simply to navigate, but to continue the work that began centuries ago on Earth. The telescope is already tracking one particular star. At first glance, nothing seems remarkable about it. It shines steadily against the darkness, much like every other point of light surrounding it. But the display beside the telescope tells a different story. Measurements collected over many weeks have been carefully layered together. One observation means very little. 100 observations begin to reveal a pattern. The stars moving, not by much. In fact, the movement is so incredibly small that no human eye could ever notice it simply by looking through the window. Yet the instruments aboard Genesis are patient. Night after night, week after week, they continue measuring. Gradually, a gentle rhythm begins to emerge. The star drifts ever so slightly in one direction, then slowly returns, again and again. It is almost as though something unseen is quietly tugging on it. And that is exactly what is happening. Hidden within the darkness, far too small and far too faint to see directly, a planet circles its distant sun. As it travels around the star, its own gravity gently pulls back on the star itself. The motion is incredibly small, yet it is enough. Enough for careful instruments to measure. Enough for scientists to know that an unseen world is there, long before Genesis ever left Earth. This was one of the first ways humanity began discovering planets around other stars. Not by seeing the planets, but by watching the tiny movements they created. It was a remarkable discovery, because once astronomers learned how to recognize these gentle motions, they began finding planets almost everywhere they looked. One became dozens, dozens became hundreds, hundreds became thousands. With every new discovery, a picture slowly began to emerge. Planets were not unusual. They were not rare. The galaxy appeared to be filled with them. As you look back toward the star charts lining the observation lounge, the tiny points of light begin to feel different. Each one is no longer simply another distant sun. It is a possibility. A world may be circling it at this very moment. Perhaps several worlds. Rocky landscapes beneath unfamiliar skies. Frozen oceans drifting through darkness. Towering gas giants wrapped in endless storms. Or places surprisingly similar to the Earth humanity once called home. It is a humbling thought. The stars no longer seem like isolated lights scattered across the universe. They begin to feel like distant neighborhoods, each with stories of their own. And yet, as extraordinary as that discovery is, it also deepens the mystery. If planets are so wonderfully common, if nature creates them almost everywhere it creates stars, then perhaps the universe has had countless opportunities to create life. Genesis continues quietly onward. The telescope moves to its next observation. Another star, another possibility, another world that may exist beyond the reach of human eyes. Tomorrow evening, we will take the next step in that remarkable discovery, because finding planets was only the beginning. The far more difficult question is whether life finds them too. Chapter 3. The Ingredients for Life. This morning, your walk takes you through the hydroponic ring. It is one of the few places aboard Genesis that almost feels untouched by the journey itself. Warm light spills gently across rows of green leaves. Fresh herbs release a faint scent into the circulating air. Water flows quietly through narrow channels before disappearing beneath the growing beds to begin its endless cycle once again. For a few moments, it is easy to forget that beyond the hull lies the cold emptiness of interstellar space. Life has a remarkable way of making even the most distant places feel like home. Everything growing here depends upon balance. Every drop of water is recovered, purified, and returned to the system. The air exhaled throughout the ship is carefully collected and delivered back to the plants. In return, the gardens quietly replenish the oxygen that every member of the crew will breathe. Nothing is wasted. Every living thing aboard Genesis depends upon another. It is a small ecosystem, carefully carried between the stars. As you continue through the gardens, you pass one of the biology laboratories. Unlike the larger growing bays that provide food for the ship, these smaller research stations are devoted to something far more fundamental: understanding life itself. Inside, scientists continue long-running experiments using microscopic organisms. Some are exposed to slightly different temperatures. Others receive more or less water. Some are placed under carefully controlled lighting conditions that imitate environments found on distant worlds. The experiments are quiet, patient, sometimes taking weeks before revealing even the smallest result. Yet every observation brings humanity one small step closer to understanding one of nature's greatest mysteries. What does life truly need? The answer seems simple at first. Life needs water, it needs energy, it needs the right chemical building blocks: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, elements that are not rare at all. In fact, astronomers have discovered them throughout our galaxy. They exist inside enormous clouds of gas between the stars. They are found within comets, inside distant planetary systems, even within the thin clouds of dust that drift through interstellar space. The ingredients themselves appear to be almost everywhere. That is one of the most remarkable discoveries modern astronomy has ever made. The universe is not lacking the raw materials for life. And yet, ingredients alone do not answer the question. A kitchen filled with flour, water, and salt does not become a loaf of bread on its own. In much the same way, the universe may contain all the chemistry necessary for life. Without that chemistry ever becoming alive, how that first extraordinary step happened on Earth remains one of science's greatest unsolved mysteries. At some point, long before dinosaurs, long before forests, long before the first fish explored ancient oceans, something changed. Simple chemistry became biology. The first living cells appeared. Exactly how it happened, we still do not know. As you continue walking through the hydroponic ring, you find that uncertainty strangely comforting, even aboard humanity's most advanced spacecraft, surrounded by remarkable technology. There are still questions greater than ourselves. Perhaps that is exactly how science is meant to be. Not a collection of perfect answers, but a journey of patient discovery. Genesis continues quietly onward. Within her hull, life flourishes. Beyond her windows, countless worlds continue circling distant suns. Many may possess water. Many may contain the same elements that surround you every day aboard this ship. Whether those ingredients have ever come together to create life remains one of the greatest mysteries in the universe. Tomorrow, we will take another step toward answering it, because even if life begins often, the journey from the first tiny cell to a civilization capable of crossing the stars may be far more extraordinary than anyone once imagined. Chapter 4. A very long journey. This afternoon, you find yourself with a little time before your next shift. Rather than returning to your quarters, you decide to visit one of Genesis's quieter places, the Living Archive. It is more than a library. It is a place where the history of Earth has been carefully preserved for every generation that will one day call this ship home. Shelves hold books, printed long before Genesis was ever constructed. Interactive displays preserve photographs of forests, oceans, deserts, and cities that many aboard will never see with their own eyes. Children often come here to learn about the world their ancestors left behind. Adults come for different reasons. Sometimes, simply to remember. As you wander through the exhibits, one display quietly captures your attention. It is a timeline, not of human history, but of life itself. At one end, the Earth has only just formed, a young world of molten rock, volcanic eruptions, and endless collisions. Nothing could survive there. Yet as millions of years became billions, the planet slowly changed. The surface cooled. Rain began to fall. The first oceans gathered. Somewhere within those ancient waters, life appeared. Exactly how it happened remains one of science's greatest mysteries. But once it did, the timeline begins moving almost imperceptibly. Tiny, single-celled organisms, nothing more. For an astonishing length of time, that was all life on Earth would ever be. You continue walking beside the display. Millions of years quietly pass beneath your feet. Then hundreds of millions more. The first complex cells appear. Still, no animals, no forests, no fish, no birds, no mammals. Just microscopic life, patiently changing. Generation after generation, the scale is difficult to comprehend. If the entire history of Earth were compressed into a single calendar year, complex life would not appear until autumn. the dinosaurs would not arrive until late December. Human beings would appear only during the final moments before midnight on the last day of the year. You pause for a moment. It is a humbling thought. Life itself may not have been the most extraordinary step. Perhaps the truly remarkable part was everything that happened afterward. The journey from simple cells to creatures capable of wondering where they came from, to minds capable of building telescopes, writing music, exploring mathematics, and eventually constructing a ship called Genesis. Looking once more at the timeline, you begin to understand something. Earth had billions of years to experiment. Countless species appeared. Most disappeared. Entire branches of life simply came to an end. Only one, as far as we know, reached the point where it could ask questions about the universe. Perhaps intelligence is not an inevitable destination. Perhaps it is one possibility among countless others. A rare path, reached only after an unimaginably long journey. Genesis continues quietly onward. Within our walls, humanity carries with it billions of years of Earth's history. Not just our own history, but the history of every living thing that came before us. If another world also gave rise to life, would it follow the same path? Would intelligence emerge? Or would that planet remain forever filled with oceans, forests, and creatures that never once looked toward the stars? For now, no one knows. But tomorrow, our journey will lead us to an even greater mystery. Because if intelligent civilizations can arise, why does the universe still seem so wonderfully and mysteriously silent? Chapter 5, The Great Silence. This evening, you volunteer for a communication systems inspection. It is one of those routine tasks that rarely attracts much attention. Most days, the communication arrays simply do what they have always done. They listen, quietly, patiently, without interruption. The equipment occupies only a small section of Genesis. Behind its protective panels are receivers sensitive enough to detect unimaginably faint signals from across the depths of space. Every hour, the system scans another small portion of the sky, recording, comparing, filtering, searching for anything that does not belong. Most of what it hears is familiar, the quiet hiss of the universe itself, radiation left behind from the birth of the cosmos, natural radio emissions from distant stars, occasional bursts from rapidly spinning neutron stars. The universe is not completely silent. It is simply filled with natural voices. Your task this evening is surprisingly simple. Review the overnight observations. Confirm that every unusual signal has already been identified. Mark anything requiring a closer look. It is careful work. Sometimes, hours pass without finding anything unexpected. Tonight is no different. One by one, the observations scroll across the display. Every signal has an explanation. A distant pulsar, a nearby star, background radiation, another pulsar, another star, another perfectly natural phenomenon. You begin to appreciate just how much of astronomy is not about discovering something extraordinary, but about patiently understanding the ordinary. Then a thought quietly forms. If humanity has become so skilled at recognizing nature, wouldn't we also recognize something that wasn't natural? A signal that repeated with deliberate precision, a transmission carrying information, a pattern that could not be explained by physics alone. For more than a century, scientists on Earth asked exactly the same question. Powerful radio telescopes listened to the sky, night after night, year after year, searching for a signal that might reveal another technological civilization. The search became known as SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It was one of humanity's most patient scientific endeavors, not because anyone expected success tomorrow, but because the question itself was worth asking. As Genesis quietly continues that tradition, you realize something remarkable. Humanity has been listening for generations, and despite all that time, no confirmed signal has ever been received. That realization has a name: the Great Silence. It is one of the greatest mysteries in modern science. The galaxy appears old enough for civilizations to have risen long before humanity. Planets appear to be everywhere. The ingredients for life seem remarkably common. Life itself may not be unique. Intelligence may eventually emerge. And yet, the universe remains silent. It is a silence that grows more mysterious with every discovery we make. Not because we have found less evidence for life, but because we have found more reasons to expect it. The better we understand the galaxy, the more surprising the silence becomes. Genesis continues listening. The receivers quietly sweep across another section of the sky, another 1,000 stars, another 1,000 possibilities. Nothing. For some, that silence is discouraging. For others, it is an invitation, because every unanswered question is also an opportunity to discover something new. You complete the final review and quietly leave the communications deck. Behind you, the receivers continue listening, patiently, endlessly. Perhaps tomorrow, or perhaps centuries from now, someone, somewhere, will finally answer. Or perhaps the silence itself is trying to tell us something. Tomorrow, we will explore one possibility that has fascinated scientists for decades. What if civilizations do exist, but very few survive long enough to reach the stars? Chapter 6, The Great Filter. This afternoon, you decide to spend some time in one of the quieter rooms aboard Genesis. It is a place that many people simply call the History Gallery. Along its walls are preserved moments from humanity's journey. The first controlled fire, the invention of agriculture, the first cities, the first telescope, the first powered flight, the first footsteps on the moon, and finally, the launch of Genesis. Every milestone represents a moment when civilization crossed another threshold. Looking at the displays, it is easy to imagine that humanity's progress was inevitable. One discovery leading naturally to the next. One generation building upon the last. But history tells a different story. Progress has never been guaranteed. Many civilizations flourished, only to disappear. Knowledge was gained, then lost. Empires rose, and eventually fell. Even nature has followed a similar path. The Earth has witnessed 5 great mass extinctions. Entire branches of life vanished forever, long before human beings ever walked upon the planet. Most species that had ever lived were already gone. Survival has never been the normal outcome. It has always been the exception. As you continue through the gallery, you begin to wonder whether the same might also be true among the stars. Perhaps life begins on many worlds. Perhaps intelligence eventually emerges. Perhaps countless civilizations look toward their own night skies, filled with the same curiosity that brought Genesis into existence. But what happens next? Do they continue exploring? Or does something prevent them from ever reaching the stars? Scientists have spent many years considering this possibility. They call it the Great Filter. It is not a single event, it is an idea, the possibility that somewhere between the birth of a planet and the creation of an interstellar civilization, there exists an obstacle so difficult that very few worlds ever overcome it. Perhaps the filter comes early. Maybe life itself is extraordinarily difficult to begin. Perhaps simple organisms are common, but complex life almost never appears, or perhaps the filter comes much later. Civilizations may discover powerful technologies long before they learn how to live wisely with them. Resources may become exhausted, wars may grow too destructive, climate may change faster than societies can adapt, or perhaps a civilization simply loses the desire to explore. The truth is, we do not know. That uncertainty is what makes the Great Filter such a fascinating scientific idea. It attempts to answer the same question that has followed humanity for generations. If the galaxy should contain countless civilizations, why does it appear so empty? As you quietly leave the history gallery, you cannot help but think about Genesis herself. This ship represents far more than remarkable engineering. She represents cooperation across generations, thousands of people working toward a single goal: scientists, engineers, builders, farmers, teachers, families, each contributing something that no one person could accomplish alone. Genesis exists because humanity continued moving forward, one discovery at a time, one generation after another. Perhaps that is what it truly means to pass a great filter, not simply surviving, but learning how to survive together. Outside the hull, the stars continue their silent journey across the galaxy. Some may shine upon worlds where life has only just begun. Others may illuminate civilizations far older than our own. Or perhaps some stars shine upon planets that once held thriving civilizations, long since fallen silent. For now, no telescope can answer that question. No radio receiver can reveal the past. Only the universe knows how many stories have already been written among the stars. Genesis continues onward, steadily, patiently, carrying with her the hope that humanity's story is only just beginning. Tomorrow, we will explore another remarkable possibility. Perhaps the universe is not empty at all. Perhaps it is simply far larger than we have ever truly imagined. Chapter 7: The Distance Between Civilizations. This evening, you find yourself returning once again to the observation lounge. It has become one of the quiet traditions aboard Genesis. At the end of each day, many members of the crew spend a few peaceful moments here, watching the endless sea of stars drift silently beyond the great windows. Nothing ever seems to change. The same gentle darkness, the same distant lights, the same feeling of standing at the edge of something too vast to fully understand. Yet appearances can be deceiving. Every moment, Genesis is traveling farther from Earth than any human being has ever traveled before. The movement is impossible to notice with your own eyes. There are no passing landmarks, no nearby worlds growing larger on the horizon. Only the slow, patient journey through a universe where even extraordinary distances can appear motionless. This evening's astronomy presentation begins with a remarkably simple display. A single point appears, Earth. A second point appears, Genesis. The distance between them is already astonishing, but then the image begins to pull farther away. The planets fade into a tiny cluster surrounding our sun. the solar system itself becomes almost invisible. Soon, nearby stars begin to appear, then hundreds, then thousands. The display continues expanding until the familiar spiral of the Milky Way slowly fills the room. Only then do you truly appreciate how enormous our galaxy really is. Genesis has traveled an extraordinary distance by human standards, yet compared with the Milky Way, the ship has barely begun its journey. When people imagine finding another civilization, it is natural to picture neighboring stars sitting close together, almost like neighboring towns separated by a short drive. The reality is very different. Even our closest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri, is more than 4 light-years away. A beam of light, traveling at nearly 300,000 kilometers every second, still requires more than 4 years to arrive. Many stars are separated by dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of light years. If another civilization exists around one of those distant suns, the gulf between us may be almost unimaginable. Imagine 2 civilizations discovering radio at nearly the same moment. Both begin asking the same question. Are we alone? One sends a message into the darkness. The signal begins its long journey across the galaxy. If another civilization is 2,000 light years away, that message will not arrive for 2,000 years. Should they answer immediately, their reply would require another 2,000 years to return. One simple exchange would span 4,000 years, longer than nearly all of recorded human history. Suddenly, the silence feels different. Perhaps no one is ignoring us. Perhaps no one has heard us. Or perhaps the messages are still traveling, crossing the vast spaces between the stars. The universe may not be empty. It may simply be so unimaginably large that even civilizations eager to meet one another spend thousands of years waiting for a reply. You look once more through the observation window. Every star now seems different, not merely a point of light, but a destination separated by distances almost beyond comprehension. Genesis continues forward, steadily, patiently. Every day the ship closes another impossibly small fraction of the distance between the stars. Humanity has only just begun this journey. Perhaps one day, generations from now, other ships will follow, then more after them. Slowly, patiently, civilization may spread across the galaxy just as explorers once crossed Earth's oceans. Not all at once, but one voyage at a time. As you quietly leave the observation lounge, one final thought stays with you. If intelligent civilizations truly exist, the greatest obstacle separating them may not be technology, nor courage, nor even survival. Perhaps it has always been distance, and yet humanity continues to search, not because the search is easy, but because every journey begins with a single step, and every great discovery begins with someone willing to look. Chapter 8. Listening to the universe. By the time your evening duties are complete, most of Genesis has settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm. The corridors are quieter, the lights have softened. Beyond the hull, the stars remain exactly where they have always been. Tonight, your volunteer assignment brings you to one of the quietest places aboard the ship, the communications laboratory. Unlike the bridge, there are no panoramic windows here. The room is filled instead with displays, receivers, and instruments that spend every hour of every day listening to the universe, not with ears, but with antennas. Every civilization has learned to observe the universe through light. Telescopes capture the tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum our eyes can see, but visible light is only one small part of a much larger picture. The universe is alive with radio waves, infrared light, ultraviolet radiation, X-rays, and countless other forms of energy traveling silently through space. Many of them pass through Genesis every second, invisible, undetected, unless we choose to listen. One of the technicians explains today's observation schedule. The ship will spend several hours monitoring a nearby region of the galaxy, not because anyone expects to discover another civilization tonight, but because science often advances through patience rather than certainty. Every observation becomes another piece of a puzzle that may take generations to complete. As the receivers begin their work, a gentle waterfall of information scrolls across the displays. Most of it is immediately familiar. Natural radio emissions from distant stars, the steady pulses of rotating neutron stars, background radiation left behind by the birth of the universe itself. Every signal has its own signature, its own pattern, its own explanation. One of humanity's greatest challenges has never been detecting signals. The universe produces countless signals every moment. The challenge is determining whether any of them were created intentionally. Scientists on Earth have searched for decades. Projects such as SETI have pointed enormous radio telescopes toward nearby stars, listening for transmissions unlike anything nature normally creates. A narrow band signal, a repeating mathematical sequence, something carrying the unmistakable fingerprint of intelligence. So far, every promising discovery has eventually found a natural explanation. Some signals came from distant pulsars, others from satellites orbiting Earth. Even microwave ovens once fooled sensitive instruments when someone opened the door before lunch had finished heating. The universe has a remarkable ability to surprise us, but science asks us to be patient. Extraordinary discoveries require extraordinary evidence. The lesson has become one of the foundations of exploration. Never assume. Always verify. Genesis follows the same principle. Every unusual observation is questioned, measured, repeated. If an explanation exists, the crew searches until it is found. Hours pass quietly. The receivers continue listening. The computers quietly compare today's observations with years of previous measurements. Nothing unusual. Another scan begins. Another section of the sky. Another stream of familiar signals. The work is almost hypnotic. It is easy to understand why generations of astronomers devoted entire careers to searching the heavens. Not because discovery was guaranteed, but because every observation held possibility. As the final scheduled scan begins, the room remains almost silent. The displays continue updating, one line at a time. Then, a small notification appears on one of the monitoring screens. No alarm sounds. No one rushes across the room. The system simply marks an observation for review. An unusually narrow radio signal lasting less than a second. By the time anyone notices, it is already gone. The receiver continues scanning. Nothing. The computer checks its calibration. Everything appears normal. Background interference is ruled out. The signal does not repeat. For now, it is treated exactly as every unexplained observation should be: recorded, time-stamped, stored for future analysis. Another mystery among millions of observations collected throughout humanity's journey into space. The shift comes to an end. The instruments continue listening, the stars continue shining, Genesis quietly sails onward through the darkness, and somewhere within the ship's growing archive, one tiny entry waits patiently, a signal from a place where no signal was expected. No one aboard Genesis knows what it means. Perhaps it means nothing at all, or perhaps tomorrow humanity will begin asking an entirely new question. Our journey comes to an end. For now, thank you for traveling aboard the interstellar starship Genesis. If you'd like to continue exploring the stars with us, please consider subscribing for future voyages. Until we meet again, sleep well and safe travels.